We spoke in class this week about sharing, and sharing is a quantitative act. Quantitative means anything that can be counted, anything that would have a quantity to it, usually something that can come in the form of numbers. So with sharing, we can share things like costs, compliments, secrets, etc. In dynamics, it's important to know about yourself. Do you want to share? And what you want to share? What do you want shared with you, particularly in relationships that are more than a single serving friend or airplane companion that we would have, someone that you'll have a dynamic with? What do you want them to share with you? What would be important to know about one another? And a more defamatory label we can put on this would be counting. Do you want to count? Now, some people very certainly do. Counting can be comforting. You have numbers attached to it. I pay for their rent. I bought all of the coffees. I made dinner every night this entire month, whatever it may be. It is not something to eschew away from if you do want to be a counter in relationships, particularly if you want to be a sharer, a provider in the dynamic. Now, an interesting note about this as well is when you share, what do you expect in return? When you give somebody a compliment, what do you expect their response to be? When you share a secret, do you expect them to share a secret back? If you say, I love you, do you expect to hear, I love you too, back? Now, the other side of these aspects of quantitative things of sharing would be qualitative aspects. Now, qualitative would be anything of quality, things that are not necessarily measured in numbers, and here's what we mean. These are things that would be evaluated, of valuation, like roles, status, attributes. And you can see that especially if you meet someone like, oh, you're a judge, and what does your husband do? Oh, he's a barista. Those aren't necessarily things with numbers attached to them, but they do have status, things like that. Now, same thing on the mirror side. Do you want to be someone that evaluates? Do you want to be evaluated? And what do you want evaluated about you? There are certain things that you want to be bragworthy, that you want to take pride in, that may not necessarily be of a quantitative manner. Now, similar here, another word we can use for that is judging. Do you want to judge? Do you want to be judged? And again, that is not necessarily a bad thing. If you are familiar with sports, a lot of competitive aspects have judges. You are rated and graded accordingly with qualitative aspects of oneself. Do you want to judge another person? Do you want to be judged? And that can also be performative. If you are on someone's arm when they're going to a fancy dinner gala, do you want to be performing and to be able to show off for them? Do you want to show off for your partner? All of those things absolutely are things you will be judged for in a positive manner if that's what you are drawn towards. Same thing on this side as well. When you do evaluate somebody, what do you expect? Do you expect them to evaluate you back? Possibly most noteworthy, of course, these things can all be exchanged for different things. If you have a quantitative aspect to offer someone, do you want a qualitative aspect in return? Vice versa. Oftentimes, if somebody in a domestic dynamic does the dishes, the other takes out the trash. If somebody pays the rent, the other person cleans the house, etc., etc. These kinds of exchanges have had models built on them for thousands of years throughout societies and cultures. In sociological circles, all of these can be confined and observed through a theory called social exchange theory. The theory that, like, hey, I am looking for this, I offer this. Anything that is not necessarily financial exchanges can, of course, be done within these interpersonal dynamics. Quantitative and qualitative things to keep in mind. Again, not necessarily just your romantic relationships, co-workers, peers, strangers on the train, etc.